So then we are back with more understandings from the Renewed Covenant, from the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation is very precise, yet a person when first purchasing must do a bit of a search, so you can match then the previous covenant and the renewed covenant, make sure those are in harmony and in line with the holy words from the Torah, the holy instructions that Moses brought down from the mountain. So these days where then our country is going to experience elections, it's very imperative for us to make a list of the priorities of our country. What is important and what is not important. What we have done in the past and what we have not done in the past. And whatsoever was done in the past that didn't work, then we wouldn't be stupid of implementing in the future. We must be a people that can improvise and then renew the understandings of the future. It's truly stupidity for a group of people or a country to implement ideas and ideologies and false testimonies and false writings and false religions and expect then the future to be secured. It's hypocrisy, it is stupidity. It's extremely important making sure we evaluate precisely what we want for the next 40 years. Also, it is imperative for us of having a democratic government. Because then people, they have more choices. Republicans, they don't give any choice. They are related some form of religion, absolutely constructed in a line set of principles. Each of those denominations, they have a line principle. A democratic government at least is neutral. So you can make your own choices. And you are not forced by any means of being part of any kind of a denomination, congregation, because of a popular name amongst those denominations and came from a false understanding. The country already tried many times, and every time the country failed. The existing government is absolutely able of reconstruct some parts of the government, and we can extract the natural resources of our own country without changing of a government. Adjustments can be made with the existing government as it is. People, they must be able of making choices on their own without being forced. The problem with the Republicans is when they take over, they want to change and they want to make sure it works. By the end of the term, it is absolutely wreckage. They try to force this belief there is a God, where then if you do so much, then you have it. If you don't do so much, you don't have it. It's an absolutely lie. The problem is, if Republicans, they take over, we know precisely what's going to take place. They want to enforce those false beliefs. They're going to make you then have education. They're going to make you have a family. They're going to make you to go to some sort of a congregation. And if by chance you find yourself not on these lines, then you have some sin in your life. You don't know what it is, they don't know what it is, but you have some sin in your life. It's the same story. And then the problem is, then the existing president is a mulatto, half black, half white. Then they're going to blame the blacks because then had a half a black president. And he did not know what he was doing. And then the black people don't know what they are doing. And they are not educated enough. And then it's going to be the blame game. Can't be sure of it. And then when you go to church, oh, you have to study more, you have to pray more. And then, if the situation does not line up the way the Republicans want, oh, it's because the blacks, they came over and they screwed the whole situation up. Now, because the blacks don't have any education. So you go to church thinking of you're going to have some answers, then you say, oh, you don't have enough education. Then until you have education, you don't have any other word. Whatsoever you say doesn't count because you don't have enough education. And then it's going to be generalized. Can't be sure of it. And then, afterwards they say, oh, God is not with you. What kind of a God are they speaking of? A God of a PhD? Of licenses? Of piece of paper? That's the God that they are speaking of. Their education is their God. But the problem is, if it was for the lack of education and you would get yourself then educated, why didn't it work in the past? They already tried. So though many people in the past, they were hired in the government and in many portions of the country, highly educated people, it didn't work. But then it's the same story. When you have a problem, you have some sin in your life, you have to go to church, you have to find yourself then a family, you have to get a job, you have to study. It's absolutely the same story, and there is a factor in each of those denominations. Each of them, they have the same factor, a false savior. A Savior wanderer from the Holy Tabernacles. And it is translated in education. You have to be smart enough, manipulative enough, rich enough, PhD'd enough, then you can speak. If you are not up to that level, you are below. Until you get to that level, then you have to study. That's the way it's going to be. And people already know it. Don't think because another Republican is going to come over and is going to try to fix the problems of the country. It's absolutely a fable. They already tried. There were people much more and way more religious than the candidate. And then comes the white supremacy. Not very nice. They already tried and did not work. It doesn't make any sense to change over the government. What is the main push point of the Republicans? The only point they came up with was creating more jobs by having our own extraction of our resources, our own petroleum. What else is going for us other than these? Refurbishing the government, try to cut spending. In order for you to cut spending, you have to compensate it with something else. And so far, what we have is petroleum. Our manufacturing is nearly non-existent. What are they going to do with it? This existing government is perfectly able of making some changes, some adjustments, and get our own petroleum and then start up. Doesn't have to change the government. Only comes a period of excitement of some 6 months and then the whole drudgery of religion. They already tried in the past. Promises, 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 promises. Yes, the first time a half a black person is in charge of the country. The country is in the trade for a couple hundred years plus. This is the first time a half a black was able to get up there. 40 years is not enough. Are you going to compare 40 years with the 200 and another some years where only whites were then in charge? Is that fair? Couple hundred years plus versus 4. Is that fair? Or maybe the whites are trying then to draw a scapegoat to put the whole blame for these 200 and some plus years on the backs of some people. For the sanity of our country, we must remain then the whole country democratic, where you can do what you want and you hear truth. It's not fair for only a half a black president being in charge for only 40 years. It's not enough. Has barely lined up. Deserves another 40 years, then we make a decision later. The only positive point coming from the Republicans so far as we can analyze is the extraction of our own natural resources, very easily introducible in the new 40 years of government, and then come up with a plan of trying, to cut some expenses. That's about it. There is nothing else can be done. The rest of it is going to be only blame. Blame because he did this. Blame because he did that. Blame because he did the other. Blame because he should have done this. Then blame because he should have that. Then comes the oughts and buts. Then blame because he ought to do this. Blame because he ought to do that. But if this was like this, but if couple of situations are coming from the Republicans: extraction of our natural resources and then cut expenses. What else is there to explore? Nothing else. There is absolutely nothing else. This government must stay as it is and making some adjustments. And then another 40 years, let's give it a try. Why people were so disgruntled because a half a black person is in charge for only 40 years, whereas the whites were in charge for more than 200. Where is the anger coming from? Are we out of natural resources? No. Do we have iron ore? Yes. We have aluminum. We have minerals. We have lumber. We have nails. We have screws. We've got animals, chickens, plantations. What is the satisfaction of changing from a democratic republic? What is the distinction from a democratic republic? What can you count being positive from a democratic as it is and Republican? What are the positives? Extraction of natural resources and adjustment of the expenses. Foreign policies, those can be adjusted. There are other countries much more in trouble than we are. Truly is not fair only 40 years given to this government. At the very least, we should trust them another 40 years. It's very important, because what is going to be the motivation if a Republican person comes as it was before? What was then the main understanding? What was the driving force? A false god that never worked and wrecks every time the 40-year ends. It's the same junk. After 40 years of Republican government, people are so sick and tired of religion. You have to do right every time. You have to go to church. You have to be obedient. You have to give your 10%. You have some sin in your life. You have the procedurals, behavioral procedures. Step A, B, C. And you hear the same junk every time. But then always trying to find fault in somebody else's life. And then when the situation doesn't line up the way they want, all it's because we had a black president. And some people they view as being the problem. He's only half a black. And had only 40 years out of 200 plus. The situation is not very bad. A bit of adjustment, more extractions of our own natural resources, do some changes of the costs. Maybe the government can hire a private company to do the inventory, and then do some foreign policy changes. Those are adjustable. These are the only points available so far if the Republicans take over. There are no big news. There is only the stupidity and the fable excitement of a changing of a government. What is it truly on paper to make your excitement valid? Not very many points. Maybe they have an evil desire to blame others when they take over. And then they put God in the midst of it. It's going to be the blame game, the huge, the largest, the most troublesome times ever. It's not fair giving only 40 years. You have to give another 40 years. And then evaluate. The changes are very simple. Extraction of our own resources, control some expenses, maybe can hire a private company to do the inventory and try to control it, and then work on the foreign policies. It's absolutely within the reach of the existing government. What the nation must not do is exposing itself again and again to a religious system that never worked. Never did. The best is remaining democratic government. And then if they want to believe that a false Messiah, false church, false junk, false religion, false teachings, false preaching, then they do on their own. At least the government remains sound from these crazy religions. Remains neutral. Or would you want to go to some place again another 40 years having this heavy spirit upon you? Because we don't have enough education, you don't have enough then work, don't have enough money, don't have a family, then you go to those places, what you hear are behavioral procedures. And then you compare yourself with the Word, with the Scriptures. And you know the answer. You can ever measure yourself up. You're going to be told you have some sin, some problem in your life. Or your faith is not at the level where God can use. It's the same story. If the Republicans think they have a nicer understanding of it, these presidents should stay another 40 years and then they can come up with more topics of how make this nation to work. Other than extraction of the natural resources, that's very obvious. Any country in trouble would do this. Other than control of the expenses, it's very popular. Any country in trouble should do this. And then foreign policy is very popular. Any country in trouble would change the foreign policy. So what's new? After then stays this government another 40 years, then the Republicans, they come together with a plan on how to make the nation to thrive. And then later, if the people, they think at least 10 ideas that would put the country in a positive, then they may get a chance. So far, they are only saying the obvious. And then when Republicans they take over, what's count is the diploma, what you have studied, what you have done, your work experience. Then you get threatened by work experience. This person's got 50 years of work, the other has 40, the other has 10. But then you have a great idea and you have not enough experience. Then comes the disdain, condescending spirit. You know those junk games. It's truly not worth it. This government should stay as it is another 40 years and then let the Republicans work around until they get a list of 10 topics relevant that makes the country then thrive. So far they got nothing to show for it.